who's an advisor to South Australian government, thinkers in residence. I wish we had a thinker in residence at the FT, and the founder of Intellectual Property Services. We have Anurag Avula, Regional Director for Sales, Strategy and Operations at PayPal. And we have Alan Soon, Country Manager at Yahoo, Singapore. If you could welcome them to the stage. So, panel on innovation, so I'm going to get right to it, Jalal. What's new?
Well, most things are new most of the time, in that sense. Innovation takes place all the time, and it takes place in many different dimensions. When people think about innovation, they tend to think about occasionally things like brands or things like technology, but innovation are in many other areas. There are innovation around design that we heard about, innovation of business models, innovation about driving different emotions in people's minds, innovation about using art to achieve certain outcomes. So innovation takes place in many dimensions.
Okay, I'm just going to, that was a kind of a jerk question in a sense, but let me go back to basics.
I don't take jokes.
So, it goes without saying that innovation is important in any business. I mean, this is a statement of the obvious. And you could argue that in developing Asian markets, fundamentally what big, especially multinationals, are doing is rolling out existing products that have been tested in the United States, in Europe, and they're bringing them here. And so you could argue that innovation is secondary. Would that be wrong?
That would be absolutely wrong.
Okay, tell me why.
Well, there are two issues. One, of course, is that innovation in one place may not be valuable in another place. That's the first one. So you will have to understand that what you're bringing is valuable to people, and what people value differs, as we've heard earlier today, from time to time. And just to give you an illustration, if you buy a product, an equivalent product in, for example, Germany or Japan, you might find that the label is located, if it's an apparel product, in different places. And the reason it's located either on the sleeve or maybe inside has to do with what people value. You know, do you value the instrumental thing of it? In other words, what it allows you to do? Or do you value the fact that other people value what you have? Or do you value some intrinsic quality of it? And these things vary across cultures. So you have to adapt your innovation to what is perceived to be valuable. If you do not do that, then you cannot exchange what you are offering for an amount of money that the buyer values less than the product, but is higher than your costs of doing this.
Right. So just on that point, which countries like their labels on the outside and which on the inside?
Well, if you move to countries where, and I'm going to use a brutal term, which is not in any way negative, but it allows us to explain it. Countries where show-offs are important. In other words, to be seen to have things is really important. And visualize this, and again, to take a comparison, the Burnt is, have a German heritage. I have to use Germany as a good example. The fact that, if you're going to sell a Ferrari or a Porsche in Germany, you may say to people, this allows you to get substantially faster to the place you're going to go, and the drive may take you 2 hours instead of 4. Now, if you're going to sell and it's good quality and those wonderful things. If you sell the same Porsche in Singapore, where it takes 45 minutes in a taxi from one end of the country to the other, the argument that you're going to get fast to that place may be rather irrelevant, because there is no, you can't do that with the traffic and the high speed. So the argument of selling it will be different. It may mean that you look really good in driving a Porsche, or you may feel really good driving that one. So you can have global products with different message, or you can have adapted products that adhere to certain messages in different countries.
Okay, great. I'm going to move on, but I have to ask you what a thinker in residence is.
Wonderful. It is somebody whose task it is to spend some time to reflect on complicated issues, unperturbed by the fact that you have to deliver on a given timeline, a given outcome to be implemented, but rather to ask very difficult questions of people who have to do the implementation.
Sounds like a great job.
Great job.
So they pay you for this, I take it?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Right, I'm going to turn to Anurag. Now, we're going to be talking a lot, I suspect, here about technology. And so I just want to ask you, in a sense, the very obvious question. I mean, what impact is technology having on your business? It must be enormous.
So yes and no, and I tend to agree with Goran a bit, because yes, technology is important for us in terms of PayPal being a technology company and trying to bring new products into market. But it's also about experience. It's also about keeping the customer in the front and center of what we do, whether it's the experience that we bring, how do we improve his his value? How do we improve his life, his business needs? Are we meeting those business needs, and how do we bring that experience to those merchants as well that we're talking to? So yes, technology is important. That's the platform that we take our value to the customers, but it's also the experience, the value that we bring to the merchants as well.
Okay, well let's talk in concrete terms then. An experience would be what?
So an experience would be things, we've just gone live today with a program called Seller Protection, which is itself a merchant experience that protects the merchant from certain fraudulent transactions that he may incur, especially since we're doing cross-border trade largely in our part of the world. So when you're trying to sell to other parts of the world in terms of products that you bring, some of them may be fraudulent transactions, but we tend to cover them cover the merchant in terms of any losses that he might incur. So that is in itself a great amount of innovation that we're bringing to the merchant in terms of experience.
Yes, presumably there's an awful lot of technology behind that. I mean, if you take the example of Apple, where everything's very simple, but obviously that's built on, I mean, the simplicity is built on a whole complex hinterland of technology.
And that's a great point, David, because seller protection itself is the experience that the merchant sees, but he doesn't see the platform that the product has been built on to provide that value to the merchant. So yes, technology is the core essence of how we bring it to market, but the experience is also an innovation by itself.
Right. And what about the flip side? I mean, sometimes things are just good. They're good already. You know, I mean, let's say PayPal. Let's say you get to a certain stage where you're really happy with the service. It's secure, it's safe, it's transparent. What else do you need? I mean, in other words, is there not a time to stop innovating?
So if you're looking at the changing consumer needs that's in Asia Pac, I mean, let's take an example of mobile. I mean, it is the fastest growing sort of device channel that we have in the region.
Yes.
And how do we get merchants to start to look at mobilizing their website so that the access for consumers becomes across different devices? Just to put it in more concrete terms, if you don't have a mobile optimized site and someone's accessing your site through a mobile device, it becomes very difficult for a consumer to start to interact or to buy something on the site because they have to pinch and scroll, and it's not a good experience. It may be great from a merchant standpoint because at some point the transaction will go through, but from a consumer standpoint it's not necessarily ideal. So what we try and do is launch solutions, innovate within the region out here by launching solutions like MobiPay, where you can actually optimize the site in mobile optimize the site in less than 7 minutes. So a merchant could actually enable consumers to shop with a better user experience.
Yes.
So that's how we try to innovate and bring in new ideas into market.
Okay. Let me turn to you, Alan. How much is technology leading? How much are you leading technology, and how much is technology leading a company like Yahoo by the nose, in a sense? How much are you racing to catch up? How much are you actually driving this?
You know, I think what's really interesting is the number of people here who've talked about the experience as being at the forefront of innovation, right? So the quick way to answer the question is, when you look at a product like, for example, Yahoo Mail, and we launched an update to this a couple of days ago. What we've done with it was to improve on the overall user experience by making sure that there's a beautiful theme around it, by making sure that it's easy for you to find the emails that you're looking for, and to gather that in a way that is useful for you as a consumer. So when we look at innovation and catching up with innovation, a lot of which is, there's always this, it's a tough balance trying to figure out, do you lead the market, do you follow the market when it comes to user experiences, right? So I see you wrote down mobile there.
I did.
And mobile is a great way to try to understand this, right? A couple of years ago, none of us would have thought that we would be doing this all day long on our phones. And this is a habit that has been brought to us by Twitter and Facebook largely. And now this is what we've learned how to do. So how do you innovate on something like that, right? Something that the market's comfortable with, something that the market knows how to do. How do you take that and make content more discoverable? So my side of the business is the content side of the business. We've got a lot of pieces of content. We're the world's largest aggregator of digital content. How do you make that discoverable? And that is the one big challenge that we have in a phase where people are just doing this.
Right. So talk us through that. So you're saying people are just kind of looking and seeing what they find, and they're not using search. They're not actually looking for things. Is that what
Well, it's going to be a bit of both, right? People go online to do either either one of two things, to look for something or to browse for something.
Yes.
And that's by far the largest, most common behavior that we've seen. In terms of browse, how do you make the content available to you? And so we're spending a lot of time and a lot of our resources in personalization, because we feel that that is the way forward. How do you look at a person as complex as, he's a young executive, father, loves sports? How do you make sure that you're targeting content in that direction? And the next step to that is, what then can you create in terms of opportunities for clients?
Okay, I'll move on in a second, but just tell us a little bit about what you do day to day and the content that you're producing.
Sure. So I run the editorial team for
you're an ex-journalist, yeah. So we're talking the same language.
Journalist at heart, but with a budget. And a team.
Jealous. Budget and a team. Okay, go through this again with me.
So what we do is we look at all the content that's available out there. We look at what people want to read. We find ways of connecting that. So we're signing up partners, content partners, to help provide articles, photos, videos, and we bring them into the network, try to make it discoverable, useful for our consumers. If there are areas that are missing, we'll hire a team of freelancers, or we'll write it ourselves.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm definitely outnumbered. You've got a budget and a team, you've got a salary, I don't know, poor journalists.
So think investments.
Just pick up on some of you're our thinker in residence here on the stage, and just pick up on some of the themes that we've had here. Personalization was one that.
I think one of the things you have to do innovate, and I'll come back to some of the fundamental basics. One is that if you're in business, you need to provide something that for your customer holds higher value than the customer assigns to the monetary amount that you're asking for in return. That's the fundamental base. If you don't do that, you go out of business. And that, of course, as our perceptions of what we value changes, and it changes all the time. Something that will be valuable at one time will no longer be valuable in the future because people's views change. So what you have to do is you have to constantly be either very, very close to the frontier of that change or very rapid to do it, or you have to lead it. Those are the two alternative issues you have. Technology is one of principally 4 domains that enable us to do this. The other 3 ones are art, design, and let's call it emotional approaches, or philosophically it's called hermeneutics, in understanding how we generate emotions in people. So what you have to do as a company is to have a palette that you play with these 4 things. And let me very briefly illustrate it with a simplistic example. So let's assume that I run a grocery store, so I sell food, and you come to that to shop, and I have a very simple objective. I want you to walk away having bought 20% more than you intended to. Okay, that's my objective. So how do I achieve that in principle? Well, what I have to do is I have to walk through these 4 domains. And in a business to consumer area, the walkthrough starts with emotions, move to art, and then design and into science. And in business is the reverse journey. So the first question I have to ask is, what emotional state would I like to put you into to be most conducive to what I want to achieve? And the answer is, I'd like to make you hungry. Because if you are hungry, you tend to buy more. Anybody knows that, of course, shopping. So I then have to figure out how to do these things, and if I have a great supermarket, I have a baker in the back, and newly baked bread smell works very well. So I have engineering problems. I put it a little bit of the oven bit into the air conditioning system. It all smells nicely of newly baked bread. You've all been exposed to this, so that's absolutely fine. Now you're hungry. Then I need to slow you down. Because if you're stressed, you will run through my shop, and I will miss all those opportunities for impulse purchase. And I slow you down in 2 ways. I slow you down physiologically by lowering your heart rate. And one of the tricks I use for that is music. Right? So classical music with lots of strings, for example, will slow down your heart rate. But it has to be very low, just barely audible. The same way that I can speed up your heart rate and make you a very dangerous driver by generating adrenaline, by playing 70 beats a minute for you in your car, and then you become a very aggressive driver. So it works both ways. And then I use the psychological one, so I use art. I create space and colors, so very soft colors. I broaden the aisles, I lower the shelves so you can look across them, you get a feeling for space. Now you're calm in this area. Now I need to ensure that you get maximum opportunity for impulse purchase, so I borrow a trick from a famous Swedish retailer, and ensure that in practice you can't get out unless you pass as many things as possible. And what I do is I know what your most frequent purchases are, so I put them not next to each other, but well dispersed. So you have to go around doing these things. Now you've been exposed to impulse purchase. And at the end, when you come to the checkout, I use science, because you will have one of these frequent buyer cards, whatever loyalty it is, and you swipe it, and on the screen, the lady or man who sits there will read to you, oh, lady, sir, on a Saturday you normally also buy all those boring bits you didn't want to buy, and then they say, should I get them for you? So, based on these things, I have done some yield management and other type of activities. So by doing these things, I had innovated in all 4 domains, created an environment which you will be happy with, and I have sold more. And hence I have achieved an innovation outcome based on those 4 domains.
Couldn't you just lock them in the store?
You could do that. The problem is you have to extract money from them afterwards, that's the problem.
Well, they've got to go out and work before they
That's
come
right.
back, I see.
Yeah.
I didn't realise you were being manipulated like this.
No, that's right. So I'm really finishing off that. So that's how to create value. Now, in order to extract the value you have created, you have to do 2 things. You have to have a very good business model. And business model is that ability to extract the value you created. And by the way, with technology, one of the greatest ways to kill your business is to put in new technology in an old business model. Never do that, okay? The second issue you have to do is to really understand what it is people value in these domains of instrumental, in other words, the value of what I get when I put something to work, intrinsic, what is worth in its own right, like beauty and art, and extrinsic, what is worth because other people value them. And the more I can adhere to those, align with a business model, the higher amount of the value I have created, I am able to extract, as opposed to letting somebody else extract that, and I go away with nothing.
Okay.
Simple summary.
Very, very, very interesting. Do you recognize this?
I do. I'm just not so sure about the manipulating bit, but anyway. So yes, I think what you say is absolutely right. Looking at value in terms of innovation, whether it's technology, whether it's experience, the perceived value of that has to be obviously significantly higher than what we're asking from the merchant. But I'd also like to add on to one other point, is that we try to keep the customer, again, front and center of everything that we do, and understanding their needs enables innovative solutions then to be developed. So once you start to understand what they're looking for, what are their pain points, and what we try and do is try and experiment with certain solutions as we go along. We don't want to innovate for the sake of innovating, but it has to solve a problem. It has to solve a problem that the customer sees. That is
right, because there we almost sound as though we were manufacturing needs, but you're saying you don't do that. You're answering needs that are already there.
Yes, and I think understanding them, or trying to stay a little ahead of the curve by experimenting with solutions that will probably provide some greater experience for the customers is core. And I think just to take that on, in Australia we launched just on you probably have come across that called Beat the Queue. Someone coming across the ferry goes onto his phone and checks in with PayPal, orders his coffee right ahead, and when he reaches his coffee counter, the coffee is ready for him to pick it up and go. It's sort of
right. Except they brought out a new service called Beat the Queue. So you're behind them.
Wow. So it's fun.
Okay, all right. And just the same question for you, I guess. I mean, does this resonate with the way you do business? Do you recognise some of that?
Well, the way we look at it, I don't think there's an equivalent of impulse purchase, but there is an equivalent of impulse clicks.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Right. So,
How do you make your readers hungry?
Well, exactly. So when you look at what companies like BuzzFeed are doing with the way they use social content,
and lists,
giving you lists, giving you very snappy headlines that they will get your attention with,
sure.
Right? So as you wake up in the morning, as most people do, you pull out your phone and you want to get the latest news, and most people get it from Facebook these days, and you run into these lists which are so seductive just because they're such simple headlines that everyone resonates with everybody, and that's where the impulse happens. You're clicking on something, you read your list, it's funny, whatever, there's a funny video on YouTube that you send to your friends, and before you know it, the time in your morning has gone. Sure. You don't have time to read the news. You don't know who won the Nobel Prize for physics, and you get on with it. And that's the equivalent of impulse buying.
Right. The Financial Times, unfortunately, we deal in much more dry topics. I mean, it's not as though we could have IMF head in sex scandal. Oh, we did have that. We were lucky that day.
If I may add on.
Of course.
In terms of, again, going back to the device, mobile again makes it far more impulsive. You don't have to go on to your home computer or sit in the office and log on before you want to buy something. If you're in the train, if you're in the MRT, you pick up your phone, either surf, as Alan said, or actually go and buy something off the mobile. And that's, again, in its own way, enabling impulse to get far more closer to the customer.
Okay. I want to go back to the kind of theoretical side and just ask you a couple of questions. They're sort of related, really. First of all, is innovation speeding up? I mean, that's the impression that we get, although some people would argue actually not. And the second question, which is related, is are some of the things that we think are innovation are innovative, not really? I mean, just to play that out, it's like, you know, people say, I mean, there's a very good essay in a book I just read that says the washing machine has impacted our lives far more than the internet, for example. You know, is innovation speeding up? Is everything that we think is new, is it really new?
It's a really good question. Before I answer it, I'll get back to, do you know which innovation is likely to have mostly impacted mankind? The bicycle, because it enabled the genetic mixing that probably was not possible. You could go to the next village and meet the girl. Right? And that you can correlate that with the growth of IQ in mankind, the innovation of bicycle and the use of that. Side issue, but very serious. Yeah? So it's not what people think it is. The internet have yet to do that. I'm sure it's trying, but it has yet to do that.
I've heard of dating services.
Yes, that's right. You said it, I did it. So is innovation speeding up? I would say what is speeding up is a continuity of knowledge growth. So our cumulative knowledge grows faster all the time. And of course that enables opportunities for innovation at a higher pace than previously. And then if there are people enough out there in companies to grasp it, then you will see a speed up of innovation. So it's more driven by the fact that we learn faster than we've done as mankind in that area. The second issue is, are there as many innovations that are? I think one has to be a bit serious around what we mean by innovation. And let me do a brutal definition. An innovation is anything new that you succeed in bringing to market and succeed in getting paid for so that you make a profit from a business perspective. And it can be anything. It can be a technological new one, a design new one, a new color, or whatever it is. It really doesn't matter. So there is a huge amount of innovation in this domain, and they have the opportunity to happen faster and faster, and I do think we see that.
Okay, all right. Let's see. Where should I go from here? All right. Examples of successful innovations. I mean, either in your own business, things that you've done that you think are, you know, something worth shouting about, or things that you've noticed, you know, elsewhere and stuff.
Well, I could certainly talk to that. I think PayPal is typically always known as an online payment company initially. And looking at the different devices and the omni-channel presence that is required to serve the customer needs, we've launched PayPal here in Japan, Australia, and Hong Kong, which enables people to actually do a offline, in its own way, a transaction at a storefront. We're typically known for web-related transactions, and we've done fantastically well in terms of bringing that innovation to market in 3 markets in Asia. But I also want to touch on what Goran said about how knowledge is moving on and how mankind is looking at different levels of innovation. We also look at digital immigrants versus the digital native discussions, and some of us, at least based on my own age, probably will be digital immigrants more than native, rather than my son, who can access just about everything at any point in time. So innovation in terms of what it means for him is going to be very different than what it means for someone like me. And how do we kind of bridge that divide in terms of looking at serving a different audience who are far younger but far more adept at understanding the different technologies that are there, versus someone who's probably a little older and
right. Well, they'll all be dead soon,
yes,
including me. And a successful innovation?
Well, it's work in progress. So like I was talking about earlier, the real struggle for us as a content business is how do you make content discoverable, right? So in the newspaper business, like the FT, the world was broken up into different sections. So there was sports, or world, or Americas, or Europe. On the internet, the experience is completely the opposite, right? Someone who's interested in sports may not be interested in world. Someone who's interested in world may not be interested in, in cycling.
Yeah.
Something as obscure as that. The real challenge and the real work in innovation, the content side of the business, is really to figure out how do you take these entities, or tags, if you will, and create a personalized experience based on that. You know, something that covers all of your interests in one single space.
Right. I just want to go back to the kind of speed of innovation question, and I'm interested in the longevity of businesses as a result of what seems to be this kind of speeding up. One thing's a BlackBerry, for instance, you know, which breaks, you know, revolutionary. You can't live without your BlackBerry, and suddenly, you know, BlackBerry can't live, or it looks that way. Do companies need to be very careful about, you know, just being innovated around?
Because that is one of the major challenges for firms, is how to stay relevant in the mind of the customer by not becoming complacent and locked in, path dependent on where you come from. I mean, it's not only BlackBerry. You could look at companies like Nokia and a few other things like that.
Sure.
So there's a continuous issue, and obviously, if the domain you as a company operates in is an extremely fast-moving one, then the risk you're exposed to are much higher. So as a company, the one thing you must never assume is that your existing technology is the answer to the needs of the future. You must always be around there. And what we do know is there are certain technological breakthroughs that are going to revolutionize our worlds. And we may have seen some of that. ICT is in the middle of that area, and we see a lot of that. And we have only seen the beginning of that. It was mentioned before, 3D printing or additive manufacturing, which is dramatically going to change not only our lives, but whole industry structures as a consequence of that. And the issue here is normally not that people don't understand the technologies. I mean, Kodak had a wonderful plan very early on how to deal with the digitalization of cameras and stuff like that. The problem was when they came with that plan, the analyst says, no, we want you to sweat your assets instead. Management said that there was a really high risk, we're not going to do these things. And hey presto, the plan went into the drawer, and the rest is history. So, you know, there is an issue around the path dependency. Paper, you know, how many of you uses huge amounts of paper in newsprint nowadays? Well, apart from Financial Times, of course, but in that area. So the demand for newsprint in the US is now down to what it was before the Second World War. So if you are in the newsprint making business, right, you are in a business that's dying. So the problem with that business, of course, is that you have very large machines. They cost $500 million, and they have 20 years depreciation period. So the right thing to do is to exit that business and do something else. For example, vanilla flavoring out of the trees, which is 8 times the margin, has the same beginning and just a different machine. Okay, and there's a company doing that very successfully, and they own 40% of the world vanilla flavoring market. Okay, having done that. So the question, of course, means then, but then if you're a CEO in a short-lived company with a 4.5-year time horizon as CEO, where you will have to exit taking a huge hit on your balance sheet, and then reinvesting in something else that you're not going to see the benefit of for 5 years, and if you're rewarded on a bonus system around short-term performance, you're not going to do that. And that means that the industry will not restructure, and somebody else will take over. So there are numerous structural issues, not only the technological one, which are the issues for companies in this domain.
Thank you, and thanks for alluding to the Financial Times. Cutting down trees in the interests of knowledge, that's our slogan.
That's right. We cut down trees in the interest of good flavor instead.
Please.
Yes, I mean, I can add, I think one point is, while there is a core business that one needs to keep growing, and that's like a business as usual, one also needs to keep an eye out on innovation, new trends that are happening, and like we have a whole bunch of developers sitting in the Singapore office working with the government and the regulators and trying to create innovative solutions that will be applicable to consumers as well. So while there is a clear focus on working on the core, it's also essential that one keeps an eye out on emerging trends, emerging needs, emerging technologies, and stay relevant when the point comes when the customers feel the need for it.
Okay, let me throw it out to the audience. I hope you've got some questions. Back here, the guy.
Off quickly then. The answer is that there is no necessary contradiction between the two. Take an example. We'll take 2 examples. One is the pharmaceutical industry. Developing a drug in a developed traditional country using chemical or biotechnology issues. You have a budget of the odd billion or so to do that. In India, for example, which is very good at that, you can develop drugs substantially faster, but there are different types of drugs using different types of technologies. But that was not something that was thought about in some of the countries that had the big pharmaceutical previously. So they become complementary in a sense. Of course, they will compete in some areas, but not so much. The other, of course, is that technology like mobile that we refer to enable you to do things that you couldn't before. For example, you can be a herder in the Andes, breeding llamas, and you have a mobile phone that is able to download satellite pictures on infrared to telling you where your llamas is at a very low cost. And that will dramatically improve your ability not to lose animals. So, there are opportunities provided technology which are relevant at a low-cost level, as opposed to not being relevant in other areas. So the answer is, it's a mutually beneficial thing. It's like all competition is.
Alan, I did actually ask you this in the break, didn't I? So,
You did, and I forget what the answer was. But, the consumer internet business, unfortunately, is a very forward-moving one.
Yeah.
Right? Where we are today, I mean, can you imagine can you imagine 3 years ago, understanding the changes that have happened because of mobile revolution? So it's always going to be a forward-moving one. And this is actually quite a common question that we have internally, where we're looking at emerging markets. Do we develop mobile experiences for feature phones in places like Indonesia and India? Or should we just spend all the money on iOS devices?
And wait for them to come.
That's right. Because by the time you get your product ready for shipping, the market would have moved into that. So, the consumer internet business is unfortunately a very forward-moving one.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point. You can be up too far ahead of the curve, can't you? I mean, if the hardware or the kind of architecture is not, you can have the best electric car in the world, but if you can't plug it in, it's no good. Another question. There was another guy in a blue tie, blue shirt. Sorry. Thank you.
Too old, but we belong to a generation with a set level of values that changed in one way, and other people belong to others. So we have to be absolutely aware of what those are. And just to get a reflection, in the odd year ago or so, a very large telecommunication operator made a big study on the attitudes of teenagers at that time. And one of the things that came out was not a single one of them had paid for music. And of course, if you hear that and understands that, then you understand that the solution to the music earning problem was not throwing lawyers at people, right? Because it wouldn't work. So you had to find other models. So you have to be absolutely cognizant of attitudes, behaviors, and assumptions that shifts over age shifts, and not only over age, but also over geographical shifts. Absolutely clearly.
Yeah, I think, just to add on, I think it's apart from age, it's also your attitude to embracing technology and innovation. And while it does matter in a certain way that your age kind of determines the values that you have, but how you embrace technology and innovation is important. For instance, in PayPal, we have a whole bunch of developers who are of that 25, 24 years of age, who are looking at consumer needs based from their experiences as well, while there is also a great mix of people who have had some level of experience with different value systems. So that embrace between the two kind of makes it a lot more relevant in terms of bringing technology to the fore.
Yeah, and we have very similar experiences with PayPal, right? So you need to have developers who are young and nimble, and that agility is part of the core skill set that you got to look for when you're in a consumer tech business.
Right.
May I just add to that? Don't forget the other end of the curve. It's very difficult to have very young engineers developing hardware if the user is an aged population. And let me give you an example: a mobile phone and a shaky hand. Okay. Not a good combination in those things. So in other words, the tool is not adapted for the use of a certain age group because none of the developers have a shaky hand.
That's a very good point. Yeah. By the way, we innovate at the FCA. I wouldn't like to think used to think we don't. We now use only pink trees for.
Yes, that's right. Genetic engineering. The logical shift whatsoever. It just happens to be the one that we tend to be engaged with because a lot of us engage with technology-based companies. I mean, let me take a definition of design. Design can be used in many ways. One of them is form, shapes, and the others. But from a business perspective, one of the better definitions of a design-based innovation is when you create an artifact, the role of which is to change the behavior of the user of that artifact. And when that new behavior is being put to work, it benefits both the user and the provider of the artifact. in these things. Now that requires you to really understand the emotional state of the present as well as the desired emotional state to do these things. And you do it by observation, not by asking questions. And you create an artifact that automatically generates these things. And that's really important, you know. How do you, you go shopping in a shop, everybody likes shopping. So, for example, you go on a tourist trip to one of those European large department stores and you are him and her, and you come up to the second floor where you have the haute couture, the expensive women's clothing, and she wants to look. How long do you think he's going to allow her to look before he says, I'm bored, let's go? And the average answer is about 8 minutes, okay? And you don't buy a lot of dresses in 8 minutes. So what you have to do is to create an environment where the like automatically split up, and he is happy to be split off and parked somewhere. So you of course put in a beer and sports bar in the corner, and then they separate, right? And then you put in a process that means that you sell the beer at 100, normal restaurant prices, so it racks up a bill over 2 hours of 150 euros or so. And then at the end of that you say, if you buy something for more than 800 euros, your beer is free. So she comes with a dress. And now he's got a choice, He can say no, in which case she gets no breast, and he gets to pay 150 euros. That's not a good continuation of the holiday. Or, he can say yes, in which case she gets something and he gets beer for free, so he hasn't spent anything. That's a really good continuation of the holiday. And none of this did you ask anybody. You just designed the system that made it work, and nothing to do with technology.
Innovation, get them drunk.
Yes.
Any comments on innovation that's not technological? Or you're too much in the technology game?
Well, I am, but I like the moleskin example because I collect notebooks just because I like them. Do I ever use them? No. But it's great, and I think moleskin's a really good case in point to what we were saying earlier, that innovation is largely experiences first, I think. Can you meet a certain experience and a certain need? And if you can do that, you've got a great product that people want, right? And of course, with Moleskin, a lot of this is also driven by marketing, but your marketing experience and a need.
So, well, I think to that point, I think technology is essential in some areas, but the experiences could not necessarily be either technology, but more the experience for the merchant or a buyer. In a case, for an example, for PayPal, the buyer is protected from any transaction that goes wrong, the seller is protected from the transaction that goes wrong. So both sides of the equation are protected, but we use the technology as a platform to enable that experience for the merchant or any of our customers as well.
But how do you force them to drink alcohol? This is what I want.
That's the point I need to catch up on with.
Right, you can discuss that later. We literally have about 40 or 50 seconds. Let's have one more question that can be answered with a word or two.
Is internet on airplanes?
I couldn't agree more. Do you have a...
Well, I hate the Wi-Fi on airplanes. Just want to stay away from work.
Okay. Sorry, I know it's a tough one.
I would say the Spock.
The what? I don't
Remember the spoon and the fork?
Oh, the spoon and the fork. Right.
Completely useless.
You've been in my kitchen. Okay, so we're going to end on the spork and Wi-Fi on planes, which we all agree is a horrible idea. So if we could thank the panel and thank the audience for some excellent questions.